This program is dedicated to those that paid for their lives at the hands of the state.
I want to welcome all of you to another edition of Silent Voices. Beside me is Maria Malin, and we're at the Capitol in Lansing, Michigan today for a special edition of Silent Voices. Maria, why are we here?
We're here to bring attention to child abuse that takes place, court-licensed abuse, and children that are in general placed in abusive homes. We're standing up for the children, and we hope to have a really good turnout today here in Lansing, Michigan.
And let's go to a few of the sights and sounds of the rally here in Lansing.
I wanted to start by thanking Dominic's Warriors for agreeing to co-host this event with me. I think we're having a little sound issue here. Help me. I'm Jessi. I am with Promote Judicial Awakening, and I am the state chapter leader for the Stop Abuse campaign. We are hoping that we can get it through to our legislators that court-licensed abuse, which is a lesser-known type of child abuse because it's also a lesser-known type of domestic abuse. It's going on in family courts. What's happening is that the abusers are being awarded custody despite the best efforts of the protective parent, be it a mother or a father. There's a high-profile case in Oakland County right now that's getting a lot of international attention with the Simhonis in Lisa Gorsuch's courtroom. My court case personally is in Oakland County as well, in Judge Linda Hallmark's courtroom. So I'll start a little bit about our backstory, what brought me to this, and it's my personal story with my children and I. I have two children, ages 11 and 8. They've been gone from my custody for 3 years. It started out as a girl who was kind of broken, falling in love with a boy who really charmed her, put me on a pedestal, and for about 9 months I really felt loved and cared for and appreciated in a way that I'd never done. When we had our son, he was a month early. He had severe postpartum depression. He was in the NICU for a week. When you go home without your baby, it does something to you. It's not right. That's when everything changed. The abuse really started at that point. He has a degree in psychology, and he decided that when I was no longer on that pedestal, that I would be better off dead. He had said to me that our son and he would be better off without me, that I should kill myself. Which, if you have a degree in psychology, is probably not the best thing to say to somebody in the throes of postpartum depression. The look on his face was priceless, though, when I said to him that if he wanted me dead, he would have to do it himself. The abuse became physical. The postpartum lasted for 15 months. During that time, the child abuse started. It is not something I wish on anybody as a mother or a father to walk in on their baby screaming in their bedroom because dad has him on his lap with his little fist stuck in his little mouth to stop him from crying and blood dribbling down his chin because he's crying. He had colic He had GERD. He cried sometimes 11 hours a day, very loudly, which drove me absolutely bonkers. And sometimes as parents, we say things we probably shouldn't. There were times when I might have said, I wish I could tape your mouth shut. Just stop screaming. It's, making me crazy. But there's a difference between thinking and saying something and actually doing it. When our son was 9 months old, my postpartum was not so bad one day, and he was crying at the dinner table, and my husband got up, went into the closet, grabbed a roll of duct tape, and duct taped our son's mouth shut with a pacifier in it to keep him from crying. Had he had a GERD reflux incident, he could have died. He would not answer me. I was too scared to do anything. I left with our son, tried to find anywhere I could go that night to just be safe for the night until he cooled down. And when I came back that night after 3 hours of driving, having nowhere to go, his car was not there, so I went back into our apartment. I put our baby in his crib. I laid down on the floor in front of the bedroom door in case he came home. And 3 hours later, he did. And it became more physical with me, and he tried to get at our child. And I called 911, and that's when we had our first incident with Protective Services. They did not take my child, but they sent me and my baby to a friend's house until they could investigate. They substantiated him for physical abuse, but they did not charge him with anything. Eventually, I moved out for about a month after I found out he was using drugs and was an alcoholic, which I did not know because I knew him as a very mellow kind of person. I had no way of knowing that it was because he was using drugs and alcohol. We stayed with my grandmother for a month, at which point he threatened, along with his parents who have quite a lot of money, to take my son from me. And I thought that could happen, so I went back. And the abuse continued. I've been kicked, I've been thrown into closets, I have been spit on 3 times, I've been dropped into playpens in front of our son, I've been thrown across the room, I've been slapped across the face. These are all things that have been documented. There is a history. It's all documented. Domestic abuse is child abuse because it does affect the child. Eventually, because I still could not leave, there were the fears that he would take our child. And at that point, what would I do to protect him? How could I protect him if I wasn't there? I had become pregnant. I had had a miscarriage due to the abuse. I had an ectopic pregnancy because I used a form of birth control that he did not approve of and was not aware of. At the hospital, while I was hemorrhaging and bleeding out, the nurses were aware of the situation and was written in the chart not to mention the birth control that I had been using in his presence. And unfortunately, my OB was not able to check the chart because her emergent concern was for me, and she came to the room right away. And that in and of itself, due to his religion, caused more violence when we got home. Eventually, we did get pregnant again. I was put on bed rest immediately. We had another incident Christmas Eve of 2006 where we were supposed to go to my grandmother's home for the family gathering, and I had fallen asleep on the couch. I woke up hearing the sounds of my son in the bathtub. He was very newly 2, and I thought to myself, wow, this is fantastic. He is stepping up to the plate today. He's getting our son ready to go see my family. And after hearing the gurgling and the splashing in the bathtub for a couple of minutes, I realized that my husband was in the bedroom bathroom, which was across the home from the other bathroom, brushing his own teeth, and left our 2-year-old son in the bathtub by himself. I got up, went into the bathroom, sat with him, finished bathing him, got him out. And 5 minutes later, he came in yelling at me for undermining his parenting and telling me that a 2-year-old can bathe themselves. It's my opinion. I think a 2-year-old definitely could drown in half an inch of water But what do I know? I'm just the mom. It turned into another physical altercation. He tore down the Christmas tree, threw the ornaments across the wall, was telling our son things that cannot be repeated because there are little ears in the vicinity about me being crazy and how he was going to find our son a new mom. He spit an entire mouth of toothpaste into my face, grabbed the camera off my wrist because I had been taking pictures of the bruises after he had thrown me against the wall, while our son watched on. At that point, it took Livingston County Sheriff's Department 2.5 hours to respond. All the while, I'm supposed to be on bed rest with our daughter's pregnancy. They did nothing. We went, and at the end of the night, I got my first apology jewelry, but our son also had a lot of stories to tell the family. Our son also learned these behaviors and became violent. We had the final incident of violence in November of 2008, at which point he thought I took his keys, was tearing the house apart, and was going to take the only vehicle I had with the car seats in it. I followed him out. We had a lengthy, long, very loud argument outside, at which I did not understand that my son had followed me out to protect me and witnessed the entire altercation from the back step. It ended with me being thrown up against the car and having my foot smashed. It was broken 3 places, and as I was able to get myself up off the ground, I saw my son staring at us. He wanted to keep me safe. He was arrested and removed from the home. He was gone for 2.5 years while we started the divorce proceedings. Initially, I was given sole custody. He had 5 hours of parenting time each week, unsupervised. That changed when he decided that he could use the court to continue his abuse and regain control. In 2012, we had been living in La Casa's domestic violence shelter after my daughter's disclosures of abuse, which Protective Services did nothing about. Once he gained overnight visits, I expected some changes. My daughter no longer slept through the night. She no longer was accident-free. She was about 2 years old when she told me that her butt hurt. And when she showed me, she was extremely red in that general area. I contacted La Casa and her pediatrician, and we set up an appointment. The nurse practitioner sent us down to U of M immediately for a care examination. She had told them that Daddy touched her there. And Protective Services calls that an uncredible disclosure because it was said in my presence. I was instructed to get her play therapy. Trying to find a play therapist for a 3-year-old at that time now is near impossible. The play therapist filed 6 complaints to Protective Services before they did another interview. And unfortunately, because she was so young, she was not comfortable enough to disclose what she had disclosed in her therapy sessions, and they did nothing again. But at that point, they also informed her father of what the complaints were. And now she has to be in the unprotected, unsupervised care of him for extended periods of time, with him knowing what she has said. And now knowing that what she has said, they have done nothing about, and he has gotten away with. Not soon after that, there was an argument between my 2 children in the living room while I was making dinner, and it almost was getting physical, and I went to stop it and separate them. They were arguing about what color Daddy's pee was. And my daughter said it was white, and my son said it was yellow. And Protective Services had said, if there's any other concerns, contact us. They dismissed it because they called it too similar to the previous complaint. Call us when this happens. And those things happened, and they did nothing. So my children now have learned that not only does Daddy get away with what he's doing to them, that Protective Services is doing nothing to protect them when they do tell the truth. My son has asked me, why do they believe the lies? You tell us to tell the truth and they will help us, and they do nothing. My daughter has learned to lie to her father, and then she apologizes to me. But what is she lying about? Daddy asked me if I was a good dad, Mom. I told him yes. Protective Services believed my children when they told them that their father grabbed my son around the neck with both of his hands and shook him because he spilled pancakes on the floor. But the Protective Services caseworker told me that it was his right as a parent and it was just a poor choice of discipline. Would she do it to her child? No. But it's his right as a parent. And she had no response when I asked her what would happen if I did that to her in my living room because she spilled something on my floor. And the law says that's assault and battery. But they do nothing. Our court case came about after he had kicked us out of our house and we were staying temporarily in another home until I had my permanent home. He filed a complaint against me, claiming that we had been living in and out of campgrounds all summer long, that they weren't being fed, clothed properly, or bathed, which they all found to be completely untrue. Yet at the same time that he filed that complaint, he went and filed for sole custody of our children. The court said that they would give him primary custody and I would have them on the weekends because he made more money and he'd been in his apartment for 3 years. And I didn't agree with that because he admitted to them that he had duct taped our son's mouth shut. He signed an affidavit to the domestic abuse. How could they do that? I fought it to the referee. The referee said the same thing, and the report came back with the exact same recommendation, but the statement included, we're not recommending the custody change because Dad is a better parent, but because he earns more money and he's lived in his apartment for 3 years. He admitted again to the referee that he had duct taped our son's mouth shut and that there was a sworn affidavit to the domestic abuse. And so I took it as far as you could and requested a hearing before the judge, because how could a judge look at the evidence to see all of the court work and the doctor's notes and the criminal conviction for domestic violence and still give this man custody of our children? I was denied subpoenas for witnesses. I was denied to be able to enter into evidence the medical reports, and the judge knew of the conviction. And by the end of it, I was declared completely insane. I was told that I am going to need psychological evaluations and psychiatric care for my mental health problems because I had disclosed the abuse, and she decided that there was none. That the altercation that got him arrested in the first place, the one where he broke my foot in 3 places, that it was an isolated altercation, she called it, and said that our children would not be scared of him if I was not. Mind you, he had been stalking us. He had broken into our home and stolen items, and the children knew because those items were in his apartment. The judge not only gave him custody, she gave him sole custody. No legal to me, no physical to me, and I am on supervised visitation with my children that costs $40 an hour at a center where we sit in an 11 by 11 room with the blinds drawn open and a woman who sits in a chair in the doorway and watches everything we do. I am not allowed to initiate contact with my children. We are not allowed to whisper. I am not allowed to say, I will see you next week. Our children continue to suffer the abuse, and it's allowed by the family court. And the court-licensed abuse is a continuation of child abuse that these children have been suffering before these court cases ever started. There are children who have been murdered. There are children who are being placed with convicted child molesters. Through the work I've been doing, I have had numerous people contact me with cases in the same courtroom that I have, with the same judge who's been on the bench since John Engler appointed her. The worst one, in my opinion, of the 18 other cases of court-licensed abuse in Linda Hallmark's courtroom was actually a father who found out his former wife married a convicted child molester. He's on the sex offender registry, and he went to get sole custody of his daughters, as very well he should. But as a protective parent, He was scrutinized, and having read the transcripts myself, the referee said to him, "We looked at the child abuse and the molestation wasn't that bad. Your girls will be okay." Linda Hallmark knowingly signed an order awarding sole custody to a woman who is living and married to a convicted child molester. And this gentleman was placed on supervised visits. The court-licensed abuse is not just a Michigan problem. It's all over the country. 58,000 children every year is the conservative estimate as to how many children are knowingly placed with an abusive parent, either through unsupervised parenting time and all the way up to sole custody, to where they completely eliminate the protective parent from the children's lives. Our courts are telling our children that they hear them and they don't care. And that brings me to what I've started with Promote Judicial Awakening, to where we are trying to educate the people to make educated votes. A lot of times in the election, you look at the big names, you look at the governors and you look at the president, and you might look at your senators and representatives. The judges are actually very important. We need people to actually look at these judges and who they are, because they continue to be reappointed to the bench. Do not vote blindly because it says incumbent beside their name. The Stop Abuse campaign has asked me to be the chapter leader. We're trying to get the Safe Child Act. The Safe Child Act will implement changes to our custody laws that will force our family courts to be trained in domestic abuse and child abuse. It will bring them to points where they cannot just say, this abuser, it's okay. This abuser is a parent, they should have rights. An abuser should not have rights to their children. Custody to abusers, it's child abuse. These judges are becoming child abusers when they give custody to an abusive parent. And it needs to stop. And we're hoping that with this event today, our legislators can look at the information, can say, you know what, you're right, it is a big problem. Because in the last year that I've been trying to contact them and find a sponsor for this bill, I have been met with the frequent statement of, show me how it's a big enough problem that we should do something about it. One child is a big enough problem. 58,000 children every year nationwide is a big enough problem. We need the Safe Child Act. We need our legislators to understand that it is important. And the custody to abusers needs to stop. And on that note, I think I am out of words. It's a problem that's very passionate to me. Many people are not aware of it because it is family court and the media won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And unfortunately, you see that there are gag orders on a lot of litigants and they are prohibited from speaking about their cases. It's not the case in my situation, but I don't see it too far out of my future. And in the meantime, I will continue to speak out against these judges and the corruption and the abuse that they are allowing these children to suffer. Thank you.
If you would like to be a guest on Silent Voices, contact us at miparentalrights@gmail.com. That's miparentalrights@gmail.com. want to thank each and every one of you for joining in today for a special edition of Silent Voices.
You can catch us next week, same time, same channel.
Until next week, my friends, remember, your voice can make the difference.